We are headed out to the Pac-12 to talk some Washington Huskies football with Jack Follman of the Pac12.com and also of Pacific Takes. Hey, Jack, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me on.
So, those Pac-12 fans, I believe, would like to check out our last video because we ran through all the quarterback changes throughout the conference, and that includes at Washington where Siler Miles has decided to leave the program. And we've got suddenly a quarterback battle during spring practice. So, Jack, let's start right there in regards to the guys in the mix.
Three guys right now. The only guy with any experience is a redshirt junior, Jeff Lindquist. He was a four-star recruit and Elite 11 guy coming out of Mercer Island High School a few years ago. He was a really highly touted recruit, came in with Siler Miles in the same class. People were really excited about both of them. Now only one of them is here, and Lindquist was the guy who kind of looked like he was going to play out to maybe be the backup of the two, but now he's suddenly becoming the front runner to take the job after Miles left. Lindquist started the game last year, the opener, the Hawaii game, had kind of an abysmal game, and then kind of became an afterthought after that. Mostly was only used after that mainly as a runner because he's a big 6'3", 245 guy who can take a snap and has the speed also to run over people. So he's kind of the most experienced guy, the longest guy in the program. But a lot of people kind of been doubting his ability to take charge of the race. The second guy is KJ Carta-Samuels. He's a redshirt freshman. He was the first quarterback signed by Chris Petersen. He's a similar kind of guy. He's a big, like 6'2", 220, I think maybe 225 guy who was actually more of a runner in high school coming out of San Jose. But from all reports I've got at practice, he's the kind of guy who passes the look test, just looks and feels like a quarterback. He's Petersen's first signee, so a lot of people thought he had the inside track coming in the spring. Third guy is a guy who graduated high school early, Jake Browning, to enroll for spring and be there. He's a guy kind of like Kellen Moore. He's a little bit smaller. He's 6'1", 6'1 and a half-ish, probably around 200 pounds. Looks like a high school kid from the pictures I've seen of him so far. But he obliterated a lot of records in high school. Is one of the top guys in the last class that just signed of quarterbacks. So people are really excited to see what he can do.
Jack, of course, Washington comes off an 8-6 campaign. They were a pretty heavy favorite in the bowl game against Oklahoma State, and were surprised in that one, really blown out early in the game before they made a bit of a game out of it. Again, surprising loss as a double-digit favorite in that one. Chris Petersen, what he accomplished at Boise State needs to be locked and loaded and sealed. I don't think anything that he fails to accomplish in Washington would compromise what the accomplishments were with the Broncos, because it was amazing in busting the BCS on a regular basis. But now he breaks into the big leagues per se. Has a decent season. He's coming into his third season. So your thoughts about Chris Petersen, where he stands with what he's accomplished thus far, his prospects for building something lasting at Washington that can really match up with the Oregons and Stanfords of the Pac-12 North?
Kind of a weird first year for Petersen, because as you can see if you've been looking at NFL mock drafts, the Huskies had a lot of NFL talent last year that, someone might just assume that, oh, they have 3 guys who might go in the first round, 4 guys who might go in the first 2 rounds. You might look at that and say, well, they should have won a lot more games. But the problem was the personnel wasn't there on offense in this first year, and especially at quarterback, because Siler Miles and a couple other guys who got the start really just didn't work out that well for what I think Petersen wanted to do, and the team kind of won the games they should have won, but never won any games they weren't supposed to win, which is kind of what was Petersen's calling card at Boise State. So it kind of made, I think, a lot of fans and pundits kind of scratch their head and wonder if if this is going to translate to Washington, because that's what he did at Boise State. He won the games he wasn't supposed to win, but also took care of business. Overall, I think going forward after this season, I think it's really kind of hard to gauge too much of confidence in what he's done so far, because he had one season, he had a lot of talent and experience, but it was someone else's talent and experience, and he didn't really take it any higher than, probably per the average of what you'd expect. But at the same time, everyone respects Chris Petersen's past, so I think it's going to be kind of wait and see mode for the next year or two to see what he does. If the team comes out, I think, after losing all the talent they lost after this season, if they go out and they make a bowl next year, I think that's going to go a long ways to show that he can take a program, and even if it's a tougher hand at Washington, he's going to be able to start building. If they come out and they go win 3 or 4 games, which is a real possibility, I think people are going to start to question if maybe it's just not the right situation for him.
Well, Jack, of course, we know the climate of college football is win and win for me now, and especially when you go to a program like a Washington, which isn't an elite program, but at the same time has had success over the last 25 to 30 years, and you're Chris Petersen and expected to win big. A lot of people around the country not giving him necessarily a lot of time as much as you would, or people that are in the know and understanding of the personnel and the challenges facing him right now. So you alluded to some big-time talent moving on to the NFL stage. A lot of guys leaving overall. Whatever depth they had seems to be lost. They lose a lot along the offensive and defensive lines, lose double-digit on the depth chart, depending on your depth chart. So kind of size up what's left of this Washington team for 2015.
Boy, really, the reason why I think, at least personally for me, I think the expectations are not too high for Chris Petersen in the second year. They might lose more of the talent and experience than anyone out of the Pac-12 coming off of this year, and that includes Oregon, who's losing Mariota and some other All-Americans. This team definitely is just going to have to completely rebuild. There's not much. There's the quarterback position where they even lost their starter there, and he was the guy who was supposed to be coming back. But what they do have coming back, they have a backfield that has some talent, including a guy, Dwayne Washington, who had a few good games, kind of a home run back, the guy who might run for 1.5 yards, 8 straight carries, and burst out a 70-yarder. He's in there with a couple other young running backs that you're going to be in the mix and maybe see some more of. They have some young receivers coming back as well. The most exciting of which is John Ross, who's kind of a highlight reel D'Anthony Thomas type guy who can return kicks for touchdowns. Is the kind of guy who smaller, touches the ball, and can be gone for 80 yards any given play. Then on defense, they have a really young secondary. I think at one point they were starting 3 freshmen and a sophomore back there last year. All those guys are back, including Budda Baker, who was a big-time recruit in Petersen's first class, who from early analyzing the spring practices this year, he's the guy who people are pointing to being a future star. Other than that, especially in the offensive, defensive lines, linebacker, you're going to see a lot of guys who, hardcore Husky fans know about, but the average Pac-12 fan has never heard of, who are going to have to quickly become guys that are Pac-12 standouts, solid starters. Are the Huskies might not make a bowl next year.
Well, there's no doubt, Jack. I've got my work cut out for me in familiarizing myself with this Washington roster because, like you say, we see a lot of draft boards with Washington players scattered about that we may see drafted in just a few weeks in Chicago, but what's left is a bit unfamiliar to most of us. So it'll be interesting to see if the Huskies can kind of weather 2015 and if Petersen can put things together and maybe eke out a bowl appearance and get through this transitional stage where he's still playing with Sark's talent and trying to build his own base of recruits.
Yeah, for sure. A bowl game, I think, is a realistic Husky fan. I think a bowl game to them will say a lot. The bar is a little bit lower than it may have been coming in last year, where I think people expected him to take all this talent that Sarkisian left and just kind of add his magic touch to it. Now I think people are a little bit more realistic. They see that it's not that easy, and then especially this year when that cupboard that Sark kind of left full for 1 year, it's pretty barren now, and it's going to be a lot of guys who some were his recruits, some were Sark recruits. They're going to have to step up.
All right, he is Jack Follman of Pacific Takes and also a contributor to Pac12.com. Hey, Jack, we always appreciate the knowledge.
Oh yeah, thank you. Anytime.